Don't ever give me a gas.
Yeah, it's ready. Are you ready, Chair?
Oh,
So we can
yes. That's true. It works.
Okay, are you ready? I think we're on, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. This is so great to see everyone, most people in person. And thank you very much. And is Cynthia?
She's out. She's out on
She's
medical
out
leave right now.
Yay.
Bet.
Okay, here we go, guys.
Okay, Laura Fitzsimmons,
Here.
Kate Thomas, here, Joni Eastley,
Yep.
Chris Giuliani,
Here.
Doug Wells.
Aye.
Susan Bush, here, Angela Cook. Lorena Dellinger, here, Joe Green,
Here.
Allison Joffe,
Here.
Harriet Cummings,
Here.
Jared Hickman, Justice William Moffett, and Emmanuel.
Here.
Thank you. So we have a quorum?
Yes.
All right. Going through the agenda for the Nevada State Board of Indigent Defense Services. Today, we are actually most of this meeting in Carson City, which is a delight, and have, I think, a relatively short agenda. We're going to begin with public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to make comment at this time? Okay, I'm not hearing or seeing any indication of any public comment. So we will move to item 3, approval of the minutes. First, the February 29th, 2024 board meeting. That's included in our packet. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? Thank you. Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes of February 29th, 2024, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great, so approved. Now also the minutes from the May 2nd, 2024 workshop. Everyone has hopefully had an opportunity to review those minutes. Are there any questions, comments?
Madam Chair, I have no comments, but I will say I was not.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? All right, any?
I'll make a motion or the motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank
Second.
you. All right, those minutes of May 2nd, 2024 workshop.
Just always trying to help the chair.
And it's very appreciated. All right, and so item number 4 is a follow-up on that May 2nd workshop. And this is for discussion and possible action. Marcy, would you like to address that? I think they can be asking to continue that.
That's correct, Chair. We would request that this could be moved forward. The Supreme Court has actually formed a 250 committee to review the Supreme Court Rule 250, and they're also reviewing qualifications. Obviously, we want ours to be in harmony, and they haven't made a final decision yet. So I'm asking if we can move this forward to a future date once they've made their decision as to what their qualifications are, and I'll bring it back to this board.
Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense. Is that something we need a motion on to move, or can we just move it? Todd?
Hi, Madam Chair. No motion is needed on that. The chair can dictate if something needs to be pushed forward to a future agenda.
Okay, so much power. All right, then we will move that to a future agenda, Marcy, and ask you just to put it on when you feel it's appropriate. Thank you. All right, now we have people to introduce here. First is Patty Pepper out here.
She's online.
Oh, okay. Would you like to, Marcy, would you like to introduce Mr. Caparetta?
So Patty, if you could unmute yourself. Patty was selected by Governor Lombardo to serve as the Nevada State Public Defender. And I think the coolest thing I've heard about Ms. Caparetta is she's got a bingo board where she's trying to get all of these different positions at the state level and fill those out. So now she's crossed off Nevada State Public Defender, and I just wanted to make sure she was here to introduce herself to you. So Patty, if there's anything you wanted to say.
Okay, I think I managed to unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I can barely hear you and I have my computer volume at 100%. So I'm not sure what's expected. You want me to talk about being a job jumper, can't keep a job. I have this long history. You know, some of you know me, but I've served in the Nevada legislature. I served as Nevada State Treasurer, first woman elected to constitutional office in Nevada. After I lost an election for governor, I went to law school, which wasn't yesterday, it was many years ago. I've clerked for Judge Dave Gamble in the 9th Judicial District. I've clerked for Connie Steinheimer twice in the 2nd Judicial District Court. I've been the district attorney of Lincoln, Lander, and Esmeralda counties at different times. Let me see, I've been the ED of the Ethics Commission. I worked for Adam Laxalt when he was Attorney General. I was Special Assistant Attorney General for law enforcement, counties, and municipalities. I worked with all the state and local agencies in that capacity. In addition to law enforcement, we also had substance abuse committee. I don't know why the Attorney General has that committee, but he did. And we did a lot of, we did some summits on the opioid crisis and the fentanyl crisis. He also had the Tech Crimes Board, cybersecurity and all of that. I learned certainly more than I contributed at that. And of course, he had the Domestic Violence Council. So I supervised all of that. And I've also been the tribal court judge for the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe. I did that on their civil side. I did not do their criminals stuff. And then I went to work for the Nevada State Public Defender, and I was doing Carson City and Story County. And then when Chris Arabia retired, the governor appointed me, and our focus right now is on White Pine County and Ely. Does that cover it?
Yes, it's pretty impressive. We're honored to have you, and I think we may have an agenda item that about White Pine County, and we look forward to at any point hearing from you about your perspective on.
Okay, I can sort of hear you, but yes, okay.
Well, the most important thing is we can hear you, Patty. All right, and the next person that's going to be introduced is Brenda Roberts.
So Brenda Roberts is coming to us from the Court of Appeals. She served as a supervising staff attorney there for a period of time, and she is taking over for the spot created by Thomas Qualls. She'll be in charge of oversight of training as well as overseeing the state public defender. So we wanted to introduce her to the board.
It's so nice to have you on board. We're really, really grateful to have you. Good. Well, at this point. All right, if anyone wants to have anything more to say about introductions of Ms. Caparetta and Ms. Roberts, we can do it at this time. I think one of us might need some water. So you can maybe go get it. All right, great. Yeah, it's over there. Okay. All right, so now, Marcy, we have agenda items 6 and 7. And in some ways they kind of interlocked. I'm just going to ask you how you would like to present those items.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would like to present them jointly because they have so much to do with one another. We have the monitor here with us today, and a lot of the concerns that she brought up have to do with our budget. So I think that it's important to bring these together. Before we get to the point of having the monitor have the ability to make a statement, I did want to update this court on some of our pipeline efforts. As you can see in the annual report, we're exploring different ways to bring more attorneys into our rural communities. And we worked with the Board of Governors with the State Bar of Nevada, where they filed for a change of 80 KT 616. And basically what this does, and it was recently adopted, was historically, if you were coming to a rural area and you wanted to practice in a public defender's office, you could practice under a limited license for 2 years, and then you had to take a bar exam. If you failed the bar exam or didn't take it, you weren't allowed to do that limited practice. And this could really inhibit individuals that wanted to move from out of state because they might not pass that bar. So with this change, they basically deleted that 2-year limitation. So it's an indefinite amount of time that you can work in that rural area. So we're hoping that our rural communities can use that as an ability to pull individuals licensed in different areas to come into our rural communities. So we're very excited for the passage of that. We also wanted to update you that we've been working with our counties. We're having county reports come in of their plans for the provision of indigent defense services. I shared with you Churchill County, they're complete. Lyon County is also complete, but the remainder of our counties haven't submitted their updated reports. So we're continuing to work with them as to how they're going to comply with the workload by November. So the counties are very aware of this, and we're trying to work with them that they have to update their reports, and this has been a priority for us. We also have their budgets, and if you look at section 7, you'll see a form that has blue on it, and this contains what all the budgets are for the rural counties for the next fiscal year. And of course, we'll use this information to be able to build our budget. And again, many of the counties, I don't think have fully thought through how they're going to comply with the workload. So we expect these numbers could change if additional money is needed. But right now, with the amounts that counties are expecting to spend, our state expected contribution would be over $4 million for next year is what the thought is. And it looks like this. So that would give us to the introduction of our oversight contractors and what we're doing in each of our counties. So we've asked them all to be here today so we could introduce them. As you can see from the annual report, they've been separated out into 3 different zones. Zone 1 is David Sheep, who's at the end of the table. He historically was a special public defender in Clark County, so we're very grateful to have him. Zone 2 is John Cadlick to my right. He's got a significant amount of experience as well, so we're so happy to have his experience and his knowledge of who he gets to go out and meet. And then Zone 3 is Derek Lopez, and he's really the one that gets to go on the road. He's been traveling to Elko and traveling those significant areas, so we're very grateful for his time doing that. And I have in my hands an extension of their contracts. So initially the contracts were going to be expiring at the end of the month, and we're going to extend their contracts into the next year. So we were concerned that there might be a funding stop, but we're going to take all of our remaining funding that we have for them for their oversight that hasn't been spent and move it into next year, and then work with the governor's finance office as to when we need additional funding to refill that. So we're excited that there is not going to be a lapse, and if they're available, if you have any questions for them. Okay.
Just generally, how, because I understand, you know, maybe you were kind of specializing geographically in different areas, right? Do you talk to each other about issues you're finding and like this is a problem in this county? Have you run into it? Is there communication between you? Are you running into the same kind of issues or not?
I would say no. We haven't communicated with each other. You know, in each of us, you have to, Nevada's a unique state. This is my 49th year of practicing law. And I've been in all over the state. I think I've been in every county in the entire state, at least once in their courtrooms. You know, the counties I've got Mineral, Churchill, Lyon, Carson City, and Story. I practiced in Story, in Judge Russell in particular, and also in Lyon, in all the courts in Lyon and Churchill. So I've kind of, I've done, the reports I've been doing, and I really look forward to the monitor giving some better guidance as to what they really want. I can give them what they want, as long as I know what they want. What I've been doing is breaking it down with each court that I go to, like the number of cases that are being heard that are criminal court appointed cases, what each attorney takes, which ones are in custody, which ones are not in custody. And then I've been doing, sometimes I've done all of them if it's a shorter agenda, like the other day with, Churchill County, laying out what a synopsis of each of the cases that were heard. But I really would like, if they want more information, what in particular they would really like to have.
Do you think a form would be for all three of you to use, might be helpful, but consistent? Like everybody seems, David, are you nodding yes, he's not? David plays his cards close to his vest.
I think I was not. I agree with John in a lot of respects. First, we did have one joint meeting where we all three met with his people, tried to discuss those issues, whether or not we could come up with what kind of reports my attorney did as opposed to what John and Derek was turning in. Tom was working on that. I'm going to continue that. Peter is taking over John's position and working with Peter on coming up with some more uniform reporting forms. But each county, as John said, is different.
Right.
If you want to compare Nye County to Eureka County, is totally.
Do you think, and I'm gonna assume, Marcy, that Peter's gonna work with the monitor to make sure the information's coming on that form in a way that's helpful to her?
Yeah, I think we're happy to work with the monitor. But Peter's on this call. Peter, can you hear what we're saying? Is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'm just catching up on all of the work that's already been done by our oversight personnel, which has been fantastic, very in-depth, very thorough reporting. It's a lot to go through in the short time that I've been playing Tom now. So as soon as I get caught up, I'm trying to meet with each of them to kind of see where they're at, where they'd like to go. And then, yeah, I think communication between the three of them and myself and unifying the reporting and working with Professor Hanan to kind of see what else she wants to see is really where we want to go with this, right? Because it's multifold. It helps serve, the interests of defendants that have indigent defense counsel. It serves the systems. It serves improving the judiciary in some cases, or county personnel, making sure they know what they're doing. And I think it's right now it's our priority program to ensure that things are working the way they should be.
So is that something based on everything you're doing, putting on a new hat, Peter, that you feel you could kind of be doing in the upcoming weeks to meet with them and get this hashed out? So that we have.
Yeah, so I just met with Derek yesterday. I've been talking to David Sheik pretty regularly in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, we're definitely going to get together, and I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks to form more cohesive. This is how we're going to go forward. Here's the kind of uniform plan and objectives, and really ensure that we're getting, the Davis requirements, that we're meeting the monitor's concerns, what she's seen when she's been in the field. And I have recognized a couple of things that are pervasive across the different zones they've been assigned to. Things like jail staffing shortages and defendants being able to be brought up to court for proceedings, right? That's occurring in more than one county being an issue. So having that kind of communication to see, these are the things that are happening in one county. Is it also happening in counties you're observing? Maybe it wasn't something they were looking for before. It's something to bring to their attention though going forward.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments about our monitors or the process?
I would just add a little bit, and that somebody, I don't know if it was Thomas or if it was the monitor, but somebody had created a form for us for observation report and some sample questions to check on. And I had decided to use that on an individual case-by-case basis, so each form will have the case number and go through checking the boxes. nice to have that kind of form for the watching, simply check yes or no, and then note anything that was significant in each case. But it hasn't been standardized for people. And to start out, I started a little bit behind everybody else. Graciously offered his form that he had created for his reports, copy that. And the messages in his form. And too much like you have a standardized form that is easier for us and easier for them.
That's really great input. So it sounds like in the next few weeks, that will, you guys will meet and that'll get done. And obviously, it probably, I'm just kind of spitballing, Marcy, sorry. But it probably is important to have input from the monitor, so it comes in a way that fits with her responsibilities. So I leave that to all of you. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, I'm sorry to.
When Tom set us up, which was in February, so we're still further to do it. Tom gave us a set of protocols to follow for observation. There has to be some corrections to that because we didn't know what we were all going to do. And there's basically 3 reports that Tom wanted from this one. On-site visit reports, every time we went to a report, sort of general overall report on that site. And then there's court observation reports, which is what Derek was talking more about, where you're observing what each attorney is doing on each case. So every time you go to an outlying county, you do an on-site report and a court observation report for every visit. And then Tom wanted a monthly report to sort of summarize what you did during all of your business during that month. So that's what Peter is going through now, is all of those reports that are filed up for 4 months.
Well, good, and that'll help all of you, especially Peter, figure out a way maybe to streamline that. That's like a lot of reports. Right? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would just add, it's on page 12 of the 12th monitor's report. She has, under 2, she has a list of basically 5 questions. It's kind of, I smile when it says, did the attorney show up with their files anymore? The files do not exist. I'm the last one. I've got 2 cases left on Monday over in Darrington court. I'll be bringing a bunch of paper files. Everybody now has those laptop computers. So if you don't see a laptop computer, no, they don't have the files.
Good to know. Thank you, John. And Marcy, I'm sorry, I kind of went off on that.
No, I think that's a great tangent. I think the most exciting thing though is that every county has been visited. So, you know, they did just start in February. It took a while to get Derek on board. But when he started, we're able to actually make those in-depth visits that the monitor has wanted to see. We have individuals sitting in court, watching what's going on in court, and able to report back. So it's been very helpful to have those individuals in the court. So I'm excited that we're getting such a positive response so quickly and hearing a lot more what's going on in this campus.
Sure, I can add if you don't mind. I don't know what the protocol is for board versus non-board, but as the monitor, you can call me. I think it'd be great. I'd love to take a look at. I don't think I saw the court observation form. It's possible I did, but I don't recall. I really just go off of the judgment and what it says about the standards that are incorporated. And I did want to note the file question with an attorney who had to tell the judge that he wasn't prepared for sentencing because he couldn't find the file or didn't have the file. So not that there was no paper file, but that there had no file whatsoever. Was a concern. I know sometimes the file's on the phone. Some attorneys I know just have everything on their phones as well. So I'd be happy to help with that. And I do know it's also very hard to judge attorneys based on court appearances because so much happens just behind the scenes. So I know your job is difficult, and you're sometimes trying to read tea leaves to make sure that clients are getting assistance and counsel.
Okay, Marcy, thank you. Would you like to continue?
Yes, so then that goes to our review of Eve's 12th report. And as you can see in her conclusion, some of her big concerns were regarding funding, securing the 518 Section 7 funding. And as a reminder, the legislature set aside over $6 million this year for us to be able to comply with certain items, and another $6.6 million is set aside for next year. we had done a funding request for next year to continue our oversight, to continue our data collection by Westlaw, and also to continue some training funding. She was concerned about that, but we do have remaining funds left, so we're going to move those funds forward. And like we said, we've continued our contracts with our oversight. We are gonna continue Westlaw, and we're gonna have to go and seek additional funding. But we do have some funding for training, and the good news is that we have 2 individuals that wanna go to NCDC. It's a 2-week trial college in July. So if we're able to move this funding forward, we can pay for those attorneys to go to that training. So it's very exciting if we can just continue this. But those were some of her main concerns. Also, you know, there's an issue of recruitment and retention of
Marcy,
attorneys.
can I stop you before we move on to that? Because I've been learning through this process a little bit about how appropriated money, I mean, the money's there, but we can't get to it. Can you just run us through the process? How do you actually get before IFC to actually get the money that's been set aside? I understand in the general fund, but for our purposes, how does it get released?
So at the department level, what we do is we create something called a work program. So we created it into the computer system of NEBS, and we have to have fiscal background and an explanation of what money do we need, what is the plan of what we're gonna do with the money, and we actually have to show where the money is gonna come from, where it's gonna go, and what our plan is for that funding. Once we put it into that, our budget analyst has to review it, make sure that all of the data is correct and accurate, and determine if it's appropriate to move it forward. Then it goes to the governor's office, because specifically in the 8518 funding, the governor has to approve it to also be placed on that agenda for interim finance. Once it's placed on the agenda, it go before the interim finance committee, and they can decide whether it's appropriate to approve it.
So in terms of your budget analyst, the work has been done?
Yes, so we have several work programs that are in the hopper, I would say, and we're waiting for a decision on those.
And that would be from the governor's office?
For the governor's finance
The
office.
governor's
Yes.
finance office. And has there been any delay there, or?
Historically, there was a delay, but we recently had a change in our budget analyst. We have a new budget analyst that was able to give the answers very quickly. So we're seeing some positive movement forward. He hasn't been able to review all of our work program requests, but he has been able to review a couple of them and say yes, or we need more information. So we're starting to see some positive movement forward. And that's where we got the information that, yes, we can move this money forward, so we're not gonna have a lapse in service and.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so, but I did sense looking at the monitor's report of concern, obviously for compliance with Davis. Just let us know, because I mean, I'm worried. It sounds like we kind of came up to a cliff edge on some things there. And,
Yes, we have a meeting on Tuesday with the governor's office to explain more what our requests are. So we're very excited to meet with them and tell them all the good work that we've done and why we need this funding moving forward. So I'll be able to update the board on that next board meeting.
thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, continue.
And another issue, and again, Eve can fill these in, is recruitment and retention of attorneys at the Nevada State Public Defender. Patty, I don't know if she had to sign off or if she's still here, but she recently lost her attorney. He resigned, that lived in Ely. She had one attorney that had actually moved to Ely, and he resigned effective today. So she has a workload that she's gotta try to figure out how she's gonna cover. And we just have a lot of issues of whether she can recruit, because the pay is an issue. So we're gonna sit down with Patty and talk about different alternatives. But this is an issue that Eve is concerned about, and we are concerned about as well. Recruitment to rural practice, that's something that's highlighted as well. He talks about our LASSO program, and one of the highlights I would say for that is last year we had 1 intern in the rural communities, and this year we have 8. So LASSO is making a huge difference. It's where we're paying them a stipend to be able to come for an internship. And we've actually extended it so they can do an externship during their fall or spring semester. So we're hoping that individuals will take advantage of that. And in talking to the attorneys at our training last Friday, some of them said that their interns want to come back next year. So it's really positive that we're seeing this actually form into a pipeline where hopefully they'll take employment. And the last thing with LASSO is if a person takes employment, they'll be paid $15,500 as a stipend to continue their internship and $6,500 to take the bar. So we're educating our rural communities about this opportunity and hoping they'll use it for hiring. So we're seeing that positive for our recruitment. So that's my update on that. And then
Can I interrupt? Sorry, Marcy.
Yes.
How do you get the word out on that? Is it through the law school primarily? What?
Yes, we work with the law school. We had Jerry Beauty came in. He was from Macon Murder, so he came and talked to the students about what it was like serving as an attorney on that case and what it was like having the film or your trial be documented. So it was just a really exciting topic, and it was kind of a murder that took place in a small area and brought him worldwide fame. So after that, we were able to tell all the students that came about community, and we actually saw one student that was interested in interning in Washoe, but when she heard about this opportunity for the stipend, she was able to find a rural defender that offered her a stipend because we actually invited some of the rural public defenders as well as the Washoe PD. Susan Bush was also there to come in and talk to these students and encourage them to be public defenders. And I'm working with Eve next in the fall to bring in Stephen Bishop to have him talk about, indigent defense and building public. Stephen Bright. Why do I always do that? I always do that. Stephen Bright, to have him talk about public defender systems and how to build certain systems in the South. So
I would love it. I just that open to all of us because that would be an honor. Absolute honor. That brings up something I'm going off, hard to imagine. Just so you know, next meeting, we're gonna have an agenda item that Dave Mendiola becomes chair. So we can all breathe a sigh of relief. But back to the ABKT 616.
You don't even have to ask yourself if you can talk, this is great.
I'll get the duct tape on your chair again. But on the ABKT 616 update, that also, I know it's separate, very separate from LASSO, but how are you getting the word out? I'm thinking a lot of people, in neighboring, certainly Western states, if they knew about this, it's a great opportunity. How are you, is there a national listserv or something where you can get the word out to people?
So what we've done so far is we've reached out to the law school and we're working with Nikki Harris in the career development as well as Don Nielsen in the internships. So they are spreading the word locally and we're having things happen at the law school. We have also reached out to different law schools to ask them to post it. We've asked our oversight individuals to post it at their law schools so that we can get the word out. I've sent it to all the attorneys on the list and asked them to send it to their law schools or any law schools they're interested in. So we're trying to get the word out as best we can. And in the LASSO funding, we have funding for our department to travel to different Mountain West law schools so that we can spread the word there too. The issue we had is that we didn't get the funding approved until April and students were out in May. So we didn't have enough time to really roll this out except at Boyd. So we're hoping that in the fall we can schedule some trips and go to some Mountain West areas like Idaho or Montana or Utah to talk to them about that opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, keep going.
Workload limits, this is a concern. Eve's gonna let her cover on that, and then she also talks about the oversight. So that's what she's gonna be looking at going forward. So I just asked Eve if there's anything she'd like to discuss about her concerns.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity. It's nice to see so many of you in person who I might have only heard about or seen you on Zoom. So this is my 12th report. It's quarterly reports, so that means 3 years of reporting. The judgment contemplates about 3 years, but of course the workload study was very delayed because of COVID. That was one of the main issues that pushed things along. So it took a while for me to become the monitor, for that process to start, and then longer for the workload study to come out. So the workload limits are sort of the big main event that's left. And so we need, 5 lawyers, if I remember correctly, and 9, 4 in Churchill, 5 in Douglas. There's some major gaps in order to comply with the workload, even though Marcy and the department's doing a great job figuring out how to get people where there's just a need for one or half, two or more coverage, that's easier to cover. But we're really talking about a major recruitment effort. And it sounds like that is underway, but a piece of that is the state public defender. The statute says that if a county wants, it can opt to have the state public defender do all of its indigent defense or just a la carte appellate death penalty and parole. So I think that this is a major concern. If the state public defender doesn't get the funding, or if there's no assurance in these counties that they don't feel like they're going to get reimbursed if they have contract attorneys, then it's not going to be possible to arrive at compliance. So that gets back to money, and what's going to happen in this legislative session. And then the other piece is that Marcy and the department have put all of these wonderful things in place, like the oversight is required. There's oversight contracts, training is required. They're getting lawyers to, you know, first tier blue ribbon trial colleges, but they have to ask piecemeal to get the money from the IFC out of 518, out of AB 518. So that means that each report, I'm always, you know, on the edge of, we're all just waiting, saying, will this quarter have compliance? Or will the funding not be forthcoming and therefore the state will start to fall out of compliance with the lawsuit? So I guess the other next step I would think, and this is a little bit self-serving, like how does my monitorship end? How does this all, how do we say we're done is, you know, where is it where we say the department has the budget that it needs to meet the Davis requirements? And it doesn't have to go to the IFC every month, every 2 months, every 3 months to ask for the money that's been earmarked for compliance. And so maybe that will be happening in this legislative session. That's what I hope to see happen, because I think everything is in place and it just needs to be institutionalized with the budget and the funding to have it happen. So all of these wonderful things are going on. But there's one other thing I was going to say here, and that's about the state, I guess about the state PD, is that if the state PD is unable to recruit because the salaries aren't competitive or for whatever reason because of office location, then I think there has to be a way for the department to tell a county, I'm sorry, you can't use the state PD because we don't have the resources in the state PD. And as it is right now in the statute says the counties have the right to elect the state PD. And I'm very worried about White Pine, especially now that Nick Pitaro left and you know, poor Patty is traveling across the state basically to handle those cases in person. I'm sure David knows all about this way better than I do, but I feel like there's a crisis in White Pine and there needs to be at least some contracts out there, and perhaps the state PD can't do that until there's enough people working there. Yeah.
I'm glad you just said that, and I don't mean to interrupt the rest of your presentation, but I was gonna ask about White Pine. It seems to me in the February meeting, there was a discussion about we would allow the attorneys to basically be housed in Las Vegas, but taking turns driving up to handle White Pine. And I raised some concerns even at that point that it might just be a training ground for the Clark County PD's office because of the salary. I'm just curious how it's going, good and bad, and I suspect there's more bad than good, but I wanted to really hear about that exact county. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm pretty much done. If anyone has any questions for me about the report, please feel free to ask.
Does anyone have questions for Eve about the report? I agree we need to talk about White Pine, but before that, is anyone on the phone, a board member or anyone else, have any questions about our monitor's report? Okay, who wants to handle talking about White Pine?
Patty, are you on the line still? Can you see Patty's on there?
This is Peter. Patty left the meeting.
Okay. So Patty has left the meeting. What we had originally talked about is we're trying to get office space in Clark County so that we can recruit from Clark County because the attorneys are in Clark County. There are really no attorneys in White Pine County. We had that luck of having one attorney that was willing to move to White Pine County, and he was there about a month maybe, but just not a very long period of time. There just wasn't really the support around him that he needed, so he decided he needed to go back to Clark County, and there was some medical issues going on with family members. So right now what we have is we have one attorney that's based in Clark County that's driving back and forth on his own dime because we didn't have sufficient travel budget to be able to reimburse him. This is one of the requests that we're meeting with the finance office about is reimbursing him for that travel, because that's about $1,000 twice a month that he's paying out of his pocket to be able to go. Do you have something, Susan?
I think that if they were reimbursed, maybe Nick wouldn't have left, because he lived in Clark County. That's where he's from. And also there was a law student that was considering it, and because of the travel requirements too.
Yeah, and I think the other issue, we actually have space in a building in Clark County. We just didn't have the fund to be able to pay for the rent of it. So this is another request that we have is to be able to fund rent. And if we have that there, we think we can build an office in Clark and pay them to commute back and forth, and that will assist.
It has to be designated a home office, space, not the independent.
Yes. Yes, that would be what we're planning to do.
So what's the holdup?
And are we planning to do the salary structure at least at the level of a deputy public defender, not necessarily a chief deputy? Because in Clark, unless they've changed it since I left, after 5 years, most all of them moved from a deputy public defender to a chief deputy public defender, which is about a 20,000 raise, just even that step. And the last I heard, the salary the state was offering was below even the basic deputy public defender salary. So it would seem to me part of our budgetary request should be to at least pay for White Pine for folks being housed there the same as the starting 5 years for public defender's office.
So we do have to comply with pay parity in Davis, and we've done a request. I don't know if we remember, but we had requested to pay stipends to bring them up to what the district attorneys are making. That was pulled from the interim finance committee meeting, and we're still waiting for guidance on how we can try to get pay parity, but it seems that it needs to be a legislative action because that's where salaries are set.
My argument is pay parity, the argument is comparing pay. I'm trying to get pay parity for people being housed in Las Vegas to be to each other in Las Vegas, regardless of whether they're staying in Clark County or
Well, I don't,
sorry.
no, I don't know. I think it's important that we all focus. I don't know if it's a time or a place for like more discussions. But I think we all just need to really recognize, as our monitor does, as Marcy and staff do, and I think all as we do, that there is a significant problem in White Pine. And I know Marcy is looking on every possible solution that you can find. I just have a question, because my husband's actually from there. I used to drive up all the time from Vegas to Death Row. It's a hell of a drive. But does the state PD defend prison cases
Yes,
in White Pine?
yes.
And that's pretty much the meat and potatoes of what needs to be defended there.
I would think so, no. They have a lot of local cases. There are a few from the prison, and they're generally murders, so they're very complex cases. But the majority of their cases are actually cases taking place in White Pine County that are county cases.
Also covering this report too.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well, if anybody, I think, in terms of the open meeting and everything, unless anybody has something else to say, we're grateful to you and to the state public defender, anybody who can come in with solutions. But this is a real liability for the state in terms of Davis and in terms of even beyond Davis,
Yeah, and I think, and I don't know if David wants to talk on this a bit, but certain things have been complicated a little bit For example, Patty Cafferat did file a couple motions to withdraw based upon having insufficient staff, and they were denied by the court. We also had Derek recently request a Zoom appearance, and that was also denied by the court. So there's a little bit of a complexity. David, did you want to add? This is the big, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a little bit of complexity on all of these issues. White Pine is one of the counties that I've talked about this for long, is having problems staffing their jail. The jail is located adjacent part of the courthouse. They were not transporting in custody defendants over to court for sentencing or plea agreements, which is a violation or requirements from the Supreme Court. But they just weren't doing it. And the monitor was there, she noted that before the court. They have since come, they are bringing the defendants to court. So once I think we made the decision that we're going to fly and bring all the defendants to court, we need their attorneys here too. So they have cut back on situation for them. Now the attorneys to Zoom in, whether it's the state court defendant or conflict counsel, contract counsel, or retained counsel. So that's a work in progress on correcting that short-term deficiency. We only started in February. When I started in my county in February, it was a total problem because state public defender had left, Chris Raby left, the staff that they had in terms of there had left, there was nobody there. Derek was just coming in. Jim Hoffman was just starting to travel out there to cover him. Patty was just coming on board and coming in. So there's been a lot of changes. The full-time attorney that thought was going to solve a lot of the problems. Now we're back to not having a full-time person there, which in my reports I know that having a full-time person 5 days a week present to handle anything that comes up last minute or to meet with judges or to deal with the issues. Oh, great. Now we're back. We don't have that. We can find an attorney by hook or by crook, by bribe or pay student loans to get him in my county all the time. It would solve a lot of problems. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you absolutely did. I love Lake County, but I'm too old to get up. My doctor's okay, I guess we'll just keep.
There is an attorney general that is stationed in White Pine County in Ely, and there's not parity between the attorney general's office paying their attorney and the state public defender attorney, which I think is a direct violation of this. It's not paid there. So if the AG's office could hire somebody half that, why can't we get paid parity with somebody in the state?
Okay.
And both judges, the rescue and family is very cooperative with the, yes, we have a problem, how can we fix it? They're on board. So they saw something they thought they weren't compliant, so they told the line.
Okay, any other comments? Yes.
It's just a quick request, not for today, but at some point could you send out to me or everybody who's interested, the different pay scales that, I don't even know what the state attorney's pay scales are, state public, I don't even know what they are.
Yes, and if you look in
Oh, if it's in here, then great.
if you look in the notebook, we have kind of one of our build rep proposals is equal defense, which calls for a little more pay parity. And what I like to say is the Attorney General's budget seems to be expanded out, and our budget seems to be very compressed. So if we could expand our budget out, or our pay scales out to match theirs, then it would provide a little bit of relief for us. But
Where are you? Yeah, we don't.
Section 8, sorry, with Cindy gone.
Yes, actually, when Cindy comes back and she makes sample material, or I can do it for her, something I have to do. Okay.
Yes.
contribution.
Yeah, no, we need to do that.
That's okay, we'll look, there's a fun. Okay. So can we talk about that later, Marcy, with number 8, we keep moving through the agenda?
Yes.
Because that comes in.
Yes, but I think one of the biggest differences that we have is at the Attorney General pay scale with the Public Defender's Office, the Deputy AG and the Deputy Public Defender make the same thing and they have the same duties. The Attorney General's Office has a senior Attorney General and we have a supervising chief. Our supervising chief is required to supervise individuals and makes the same as a senior attorney who has no supervision duties. And then they have a supervisor above, which is the same as our public defender. Their supervisor above is only responsible for those underneath. Our public defender is responsible for the entire rural counties. So there's just, those two make the same, and it's just, you can tell that we're not at the appropriate levels. But I also believe that there's a compensation review going on at the state level, so
There is, yeah.
that
Okay.
might take that into consideration as well.
All right, so we're gonna keep track of this, put it on the next agenda. In terms of items 6 and 7, is there anything else that you feel, because we'll get to 8, anything else you feel we need to discuss?
So just quickly going over 7, we did talk about our concerns about the status of our work programs. We are meeting with the governor's office next week, so we should be able to give you an update on that in August. We are in the process of building our budget, so I wanted to reach out to the board to see if there's any priority areas you'd like us to add as enhancements. Certain enhancements we are looking at are the weekend bail stipends. So right now, attorneys receive $450 for appearance in those stipends. We are hoping to add that into our budget. You see that we partnered with Nevada Public Health Foundation, where we're exploring providing social workers to our public defender's offices. It's something we're calling a holistic resource. We're hoping to add that into our budget. And obviously the maximum contribution formula, the oversight individuals, all of these things we're planning to build into our budgets, but we just wanted to know if there's anything we haven't thought about yet or discussed that you'd like us to be thinking about.
When do you submit your budget? That goes also first to the governor's finance.
Yes, and I think it's in August. Peter, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Those get submitted in August.
Yes, so we're in the process of working with admin services department to build our budgets. And these are things that we've already been started requesting. Another request that we have is for more fiscal staff. Our highest level of fiscal staff is a management analyst 2. We don't have anyone that's able to do budget buildings. That falls on Peter and myself, mainly Peter. We also don't have anyone that can review these quarterly reports when we're getting them from the county. So we're really relying on the county's word as to what they're spending, and we do look to make sure it's accurate, but we don't do any sort of in-depth auditing. So that's something that we're looking at in the future, whether that needs to be added into our budget. Request.
Okay, you'll make that decision before August.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. And we don't meet before August.
We meet August 1st.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, we can update you more where we are with our budget at that time. And then finally, I did include the quarterly fiscal reports. We've reimbursed about $1.5 million to our rural counties in the 3rd quarter. Of the rural counties, only 2 counties have not met their maximum yet. So we are starting that process of reimbursement, and it's very exciting because of all of these changes and enhancements. Counties are meeting their maximum much quicker than they've been able to historically. And then we've also provided you a copy. It's that blue form we looked at before, where we looked at the maximum contribution for each county. Because it's set in statute, I don't think we need any sort of board vote on this. We just took what they paid last year and we increased it by inflation, which was the lesser of the 2 and 5% inflation. And that's how we determined those maximum contributions. So that's already set for next year.
So Marcy, looking at agenda 6, is there anything itemized under section 6 that we need action on?
No, we just did this more for discussion.
And same with agenda item 7, is there anything within from A to D that we need to take action on today?
No.
Okay. Good.
In the budget, you have some on that for the cases too. The case lets you work before right now, right? So it's just a spot that there's errors and so further check something behind. Lying on the tricks are telling us. And I just, I read myself. Not always accurate. It's on that. Okay.
And that's something that we're looking, Stan currently, he's in charge of legal server, and we're working with the attorneys to bring that down, but it's a lot of work to be able to bring 3 years worth of case recording and make sure that it starts to be accurate. So we've started that, and we can look into whether additional staff can be added.
I think there's a percentage you audited this percentage. There's some. I feel with it.
It's very difficult to hear you right now. You're breaking up, just so you know.
And I'll talk loud.
Thank you, Chris. It is. It's very difficult to hear.
This is Susan Bush talking about auditing basically the attorney's bills, right?
No, the cases.
Or the cases.
Because we're trying to make a determination of who's reporting and who's not reporting.
Is everyone reporting now that we've had problems in the past?
We are still having issues.
Okay, all right. So Susan, do you want to repeat anything that the people on the phone could?
Just to have a look at how accurate the reports are. So the attorney's reporting, they have 15 cases this month. And they close 5. Do they close 5 or do they close 7? How are they documenting their information to us correctly? And whether we just do a sampling and then we figure out this is how accurate it is, or we do just a couple of each attorneys to see how it's going. I just want to make sure our numbers are correct.
Good point. You could do that kind of random, right?
Yes,
Like
and
the IRS.
And one piece of feedback we've had from the counties is that they don't have to comply with our requirements for reimbursement. So there is some belief out there in the rural communities that there is no requirement to actually comply and you can still get reimbursed. And that's part of the reason we're having some issue with reporting.
How does that get resolved?
Either we need to go and modify the maximum contribution formula to say people need to be in compliance.
Isn't that assumed?
No,
I mean, we assume.
yes, we assume it.
Okay. Anything else? Anything? Okay, Jeff?
I'd just like to ask a question about that last thing.
Yes.
Are they asserting that if they get fully reimbursed, they still don't have to comply, or are they asserting that if we only reimburse them half of what they have asked for, they don't have to?
Well, we've reimbursed every county 100% over their maximum contribution formula. So everyone has been fully reimbursed. The issue with reporting differs depending on where you're at. In Nye County, the attorneys are simply overworked with what they're reporting. They don't have time to be able to have accurate reporting. So as we add contracts, we expect that their caseload would be lessened and they'd be able to do better reporting. Other areas like Elko purchased their own case management system, so they don't want to use both. And that's an issue that we're looking at trying to work with to get them to report in our reporting system.
Yeah,
David? Oh, Dave, oh, there are two, yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Explain a little bit what I've observed is the case gets opened at legal service, comes through. We get open budgets and legal server, and we now have an open case. That case remains open on the books until such time as the attorney goes in and says this case is concluded and clicks the close button. If you're only opening cases and not closing cases, your caseload tends to grow and grow and grow. So the question is, not fault of the attorneys, I'm just saying there may be an issue where we need to go back and look. And I've asked, and they've run one report for me now on the age of cases in order to go back and pull those case numbers at the clerk's office, it says case open or this case closed. My initial effort, which was just a few cases, I found about 40% of the cases I looked at are closed. So are we 40% over on the number of case votes we have, the number of open cases we have in my county? I don't know the answer to that question. My county does not have the ability to go online and do the search. You have to go manually pull the case and do the search. I think that's what Susan was talking about. Is there room in the budget for someone to do that audit?
Because that's the concern, if it's 40%, they don't need extra, they only need less attorneys and more compliance. But if you have 40 cases that don't exist, our numbers are these, and government attorneys say we, it's after we start. That's my concern.
It's a good concern.
I can tell you in part, they've given their numbers, they don't remind them, so, like, there's your numbers.
The other issue is how we're classifying cases that are still open. And I know when I worked for Jeff, we had this issue on, was the case really open or was the case be closed for your numbers? You have a defendant that's charged with multiple felonies, he's in district court, he doesn't appear for his arraignment, he goes into bench warrant, and never resurfaces ever. When does that case get closed? We had a category, and I think this is something we can have in the server, classification of closed case, or we call it closed dash bench warrant. So it's no longer an active case. If the person gets picked up and is brought into district court, how many cases are out there where if the guy is picked up, you're the attorney who's going to have to be defended? But we really shouldn't count that as an active open case for case load. So that's another issue that I'm trying to.
In my office, we close those, when they come back, we open the case. Same thing on probation, it's closed out, they come back for revocation, we reopen the case, but we know it's a bench warrant return or it's a revocation as a reopen.
And we do, legal server does have that ability. Stanley, did you want to explain it?
Well, on legal server, we have a case status. So either a case is open or closed, but you can add a status, which it says it's a revocation or a bench warrant. So it will still be open, but I pull all those ones that have bench warrant or revocation out of the reporting. Now, whether we send it out to all the counties, whether they mark it that way or not, I don't know. But we gave them that option and we showed them how to do that to keep their numbers down.
And every month, Stanley does a training where he invites people to come, where we talk about subjects, but not many attorneys are coming to the meetings. It's generally the same people that will show up, if any. So we're just not getting that desire to come in. However, we have to remember a lot of these attorneys at this time don't have support staff because we're not fully in compliance with the workload. And we're hoping that once these workloads are fully in compliance and they have staff, we'll get better reporting. And we are also working with the administrative office of the courts, who's rolling out an e-filing system and also a case management system from the Supreme Court level that many of the rural counties can use in their district courts. And we're tying that to legal server. So if a rural community gets that e-filing system, that e-file is actually going to open the case in legal server for the attorney. So it's going to appear. So we won't have to have the attorney opening it anymore. It'll be done in that action by the court. So we're taking steps to reduce their workload by tying everything together. And again, we don't have a unified court system, and most of our rural counties at this point don't have an online system for their cases. So we can't simply look it up to see if they're there. We actually have to go to the clerk's office or call or email them a list and then have them go through it. So these are struggles.
Are all of the counties going to opt into the Supreme Court's e-filing system? Don't they have to or not?
I think it's optional.
It's optional.
Okay, and I hate to be that person, but I understand, everybody's working as hard as they can in the rural counties. But they're getting paid and they're not doing their caseload reports. Just saying, okay.
I think the pay in different areas is different. So in some areas, we have better reporting, and they are also being paid a sufficient amount to have staff. And others, the pay hasn't quite increased, and that's the complaint that we're hearing.
Okay.
But ultimately, I don't know if that's the issue. We need to add attorneys everywhere, so it could also be workload. And we're hoping that as we add attorneys, this will get better.
Okay, well, interesting. Thank you, Jeff and Susan and David, for giving us more information on that. I'm gonna leave it for now.
Madam Chair, can
Oh.
I add one more piece in there? So Marcy, I have a question. So you made the general comment. The opinion is that they don't have to get compliance to get reimbursement. Was that meant that way, or is there just one or two counties that believe that? And now others see that example and are taking on the same attitude? Or is it just coming from one or two counties?
It's only coming from one or two. I believe that most of the counties are really trying to comply with these. We're still working to get the workload. There's a shortage of attorneys. So there's issues in a lot of areas. But I think it's just frustrating for some counties if, you know, if they bought their own system and then we have our system, you know, they want to be able to use their system. So we're trying to work with them and find creative solutions, but ultimately at the end of the day, we need data.
So we're gonna leave this, but can we put this on the next agenda? Because it is, I mean, White Pine is concerning, the workload, non-reporting is very concerning. You know, he does need to see light at the end of the tunnel at some point. And we have obligations under the consent decree, so, okay, thank you, Marcy. Anything else in 6 or 7?
No.
Anybody have anything else in 6 or 7? Okay, on to 8.
So here with 8, we have a couple of bill draft proposal ideas that we would love some feedback on. The first, and it's in section 8 of your books. The first that you'll see is the comprehensive indigent defense services. Heard a lot of our issues are that the state public defender can go in and provide frontline services, and as the statute is currently written, if she has a conflict, she can contract with another attorney to cover that, but she has to provide supervision. That's really not appropriate for the public defender to be supervising someone that has a conflict, you know, in her case. So what we're proposing to do here is 2 alternatives, either to create an office of alternative defense counsel where they can enter into those contracts on our behalf. It'd be kind of like Colorado where they have the primary public defender's office and then they have a secondary office of alternative counsel and they're responsible for all of the conflict work. Or the alternative, that authority could be placed within our department to enter into these contracts. And it would give us a lot more of that fluidity of when there's an issue in a certain area, we can take one of our contractors and ask them to go to that area to provide that representation. So we provided you with 2 of those options. We also have this comprehensive defense services, creating the rural defense pipeline. So this would put into statute our LASSO program that we actually have a fiscal note tied to it to continue this moving forward. And then finally, when you read again the public defender's statute, the public defender is supposed to be possibly covering post convictions, but they don't ever cover post convictions, and that's handled at an hourly rate. So what we're proposing is the creation of a separate department called the Post Conviction Solicitor Office, and this would handle all post conviction proceedings from across the state. It'd be one central location that the department can turn to see if there's any sort of issues that are coming up over and over in cases that we could fix through training or otherwise. And then it would also make a lot of things much better if we could have one central area to handle these cases and really get a specialized, the Attorney General's office has a specialized unit for this. So I think we should have one for the defense where people can very much specialize. And then finally, with Assembly Bill 454, NRS 180.008 was created. And it basically says that if counties transfer responsibility to the state public defender, all expenses after the maximum contribution are state expense and paid out of our budget. So this gives us that authority. If we're allowed to enter those contracts, we could just pay for those contracts directly. Right now, we rely on our local rural counties to enter into conflict contracts, pay them upfront, and then we reimburse, which many of the counties would like more prompt reimbursement or just direct payment of these funds. So that's what we're trying to do with this.
Marcy, there's a lot here to unpack.
Yes.
A lot. We will have time, if we put this on the August 1st agenda, can we just really focus on this? Because you have to get the bill draft requests in when.
Well, I have a meeting on Thursday to discuss with the governor's office some of our proposals.
Well, but we haven't approved them yet.
No. So we can, this is an issue with meeting quarterly. So if you want to meet again, we can, I think.
I'm sorry, when is the deadline to get them to the governor's office? Because they have that, here's our bill draft request too, right?
They've seen these bill draft requests, but
Right.
we wanted to know if you still support them or don't support them, and we can pull them. And we can start having discussions. These are just discussions. I think their goal is by the end of June to decide what's going on with the legislature.
Marcy, the two versions cover the same three, four topics you just went with. The only real distinction is whether you have kids doing it themselves or you create this alternate defense.
Yes.
Is that true also for the post-conviction SAR? Or is it separate? You don't anticipate kids taking that on, or do you?
What we'd like to do is create a department, either through contracts or actually setting up a department similar to our state public defender, where they can take on these post convictions and have one central location to handle.
So it kind of seems like we're up against it on this. You have a meeting and we have a deadline, and we have not taken action. So what do you recommend we do?
Well, I'd like to hear discussion on what your thoughts are and what you would like to see. And then at the next meeting, we can come back to you with what those discussions are, because ultimately it's up to the governor's office, which bill drafts get submitted. But I'd like to know whether these are things that this board would be supportive of or not supportive of. And I think Susan Bush and I have talked about the post-conviction solicitor office. Want to say anything on that?
I agree to be a specialized unit. I did have some concerns because I really believe in Las Vegas. Because I think that's where the majority of post-conviction work is done. Even though there's appearances in their roles, post-conviction doesn't have a lot of in-court appearances. Most of the work is done outside of the courtroom. So maybe that post-conviction is you have 2 or 3 court appearances, maybe 1 hearing, 2 status checks, 3 with counsel, a status check, and a hearing. So would it make sense to have in Carson City where there's already a shortage of attorneys out here? The other thing is, in Las Vegas, the district attorney's office that fills in the post-conviction unit relies heavily on law clerks. And so they're able to get a funnel of attorneys starting as law clerks into their office working post-conviction appeals. And if it's in the Las Vegas office, you could draw from the law school, do the law clerk positions right there, do externships for the summer, externships for credit in that office, which we always get applications for at the PD's office. And so we're getting them into the system, introduced to the state work, what other opportunities are for the state, this type of work. And so I really think it needs to be in Las Vegas because it's a natural funnel of attorneys funnel into these positions. My concern is creating an office up here and not being able to unstaff it, not being able to get people to go to it. And the other thing is that federal post-conviction unit is really active in Las Vegas. And I think it's a good pairing because they flow into one another. What we do in state court directly affects defense. So, and they always want to come help the state attorneys get the issues in there so that they can meet them. And so I would just ask that if you do the home office be in Las Vegas or the home office. That was my concern. My other concern was just for both the post-conviction solicitor's office and whether it's an alternate defense counsel, that they add in that we hire law clerks and experts potentially.
Yes. Yes.
So it's built in that we have this position.
Yes.
Also, I think there's a group of attorneys that, as we ease out of the post-conviction contract work we're doing now, those people would actually apply to be in the biggest office. So I think the majority of the attorneys, and this is what I did this last week.
And Jeff, you know, something good on Susan.
Well, I was gonna follow up actually on part of this. So the DA's office down here probably staffs half to 75% of their incoming deputy DAs out of this first year where they're working in that field. I actually think this would be a great way of funneling a whole ton more folks out of the law school into the public defender system. So I agree with that aspect.
I agree, but obviously, I mean, clearly it has to be in Las Vegas, no doubt about that. Clearly, we have Floyd and we have PD's office, which are amazing resources. I will tell you, that the burden is on us, it's on the petitioner. And it is going to need, if we're using first or second year law students, they need to be mentored. If you just sit back as a DA and just put up this procedural bar and that, and this burden of proof, and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to have an investigator, you don't have to impose contempt on my soapbox, but meeting with the client. And there being, you know, we can get out of Vegas, we can get these lawyers out or the investigators out to meet in the places that they're incarcerated, probably in the rural areas, but it's so much harder to be representing the petitioner. So I think it's a great idea. Do you feel now it would help you? I'm seeing a consensus of Las Vegas. And I'm seeing all the good reasons that have been articulated. Can I make a motion to go with version 2?
Well, so the distinction is, would you like to have the alternative defense counsel or have the department? So I guess if you have a
I'd rather
discussion.
have the department.
Yeah,
Okay,
wasn't that version 2?
yes, you are correct.
Okay, anybody want to make a motion to proceed with version 2?
Sure.
Jeff, is there a second?
Chris,
Okay.
Give it to Chris.
Chris, yay, Chris, thank you. And we're gonna add to version 2 that it's gonna be housed in Las Vegas.
Yes.
Anything else to be in there? Oh, and investigators.
And law clerks and experts, we
didn't have
experts.
Experts, excellent.
And then I just had a question about something else that was added in NRS 260.010, which is page 9.
Version 1.
Yes.
Oh, on version 1, but we're gonna be on
It's also in version 2.
what page?
Page 9.
Page 9.
Okay, so last page, all right.
So my concern is that we're amending that the public defender serves at pleasure of the county commissioners. And then there's restrictions on when they can be dismissed, and I was just concerned about that language and why it was being added in.
So I think, to answer that, so we added language that said a public defender may only be removed upon a finding of incompetence, neglect of duty, commission of an act that constitutes moral turpitude, misfeasance, malfeasance, or nonfeasance in office, or for any other good cause. So what we're seeing across the nation in some areas is that public defenders are being relieved of their posts because maybe they take a stance that's in their client's best interest, but it might be opposed to what that board of commissioners would have wanted them to take. So we just wanted to see if we could add some language to give public defenders that protection in their employment if they actually have to take a stand or do something that maybe isn't favored with the city, but that they truly believe. But this is just language that we pulled out to try and encourage a little bit of independence.
Would this apply to Washoe and Clark too?
Yes.
And I think my concern is we're not talking about, you're talking about the public defender.
The public
So
defender.
we're not talking about the person that's standing up in court and getting all that to judge or whatever. They're protected usually through, hopefully, yeah, everything else, a lot of protection. I think my concern here, Marcy, is that I think it's still up to the counties to, there's being numerous reasons why it's just too limiting or why we dismiss a public defender. And maybe numerous reasons why they're being dismissed, and some of those may not too public, or just maybe other reasons.
We have HR issues.
Correct. And then I don't think it's consistent if in the new offices, the executive director, the solicitor general will serve at the discretion of the executive director did. Like he dismissed at any time for any reason, but the public defender can't be dismissed by the county commissioners. So it's just not, you know, you could dismiss the, if there's a solicitor general during post conviction, the head of the office for any reason, but we're saying the county commissioners are now tied to specific reasons.
And we have no objection to removing that language if that's the route the board would like to go. So we can delete that.
Well, no, because I have to make sure everybody on the board, I mean, I take both sides of that.
And the public defender is usually taking the unpopular side. And, we have, commissions, you know, some who are being taken over by, people who don't have a lot of, experience with, other opinions. And so I think there needs to be some protection for public defenders. 'Cause they're like, you know, bottom of the barrel, and, oh yeah, if we don't like you, we can just toss you out. And then what happens in that county to all the folks that are, you know, within the system? I mean, it's bad enough that the judges want all the public defenders to do their bidding. So,
Could we leave it in for now, understanding? I don't know how you feel, Susan, I think it's such an important point, and there really are two good reasons. And you're right to point out the inconsistency with the solicitor general proposed conviction. I mean, that means if that person were to displease you because they didn't like, you know, something, the color of your car, you could fire them, right? Not that you would, but I think there's some points here. I think maybe to move on, unless, well, welcome.
Thank you.
Justice Moffat has joined us. It's great to see you. Thank you.
Well, I'm afraid I got lost in Carson City.
I just think this is something, my understanding, Marcy, is you're up against, we have version 2, we're talking about subsection blah, blah, 6 on page 9. I think if it goes in, it can be taken out. And I'd like to have input from Washoe County, Clark County, the rural defenders, and have a little more discussion about that. But understand that that is something that just because it's included now may not mean it's appropriate to keep in it.
Is there a problem that we've seen in Nevada how we're adding this? My understanding is most of the public defenders have their own contracts and terms with the counties. Or employment agreements, you're a specific plan. You just hire them, well, they're at will, but.
So this thing would impact Washoe, right? I think we, and Jeff, yeah, and Susan.
It's gonna do Clark and Washoe for sure. Most positions at the level of the public defender is in Clark, and there's probably 35 positions plus that are about that level. They always just claim they have 38 departments, but you can never add them up to get to that. Are all at-will positions. So this is a significant change in isolating one person and shifting them from an at-will position to a good cause term. And good cause is normally what you end up with when you're doing a union discipline action. When you're describing a good cause, you go through the 7 steps and you talk about all those things. And so I'm not sure it's really appropriate. I kind of support what Susan's saying.
Susan, I'm really glad that you pointed this out. Thank you. But obviously Allison, you and I both, you know, and all of us are very concerned about the integrity and independence of the public defender. And I can think of, you know, could happen in some rural counties. It could happen in Clark and Washoe. I think, does it work in terms of where we are all going to, I mean, we need to stay in our lane, but forcefully protect the mission of the indigent defenders. Can it go in and then, I'm pretty sure, let's just say this went in this way, I'm pretty sure Washoe, Clark, and NACO might even come in, and we can discuss it and see if there's some middle ground that everybody's comfortable with. Does that work?
I just think it's different in the rural counties.
Yeah.
You know, at the pleasure really means at the pleasure.
Yeah.
And so we're not getting people coming in, enough now. And I think, it's really a dangerous professional thing to do. You're gonna have to move if you're.
Yeah, I agree.
And these are subjects to be modified, so these are for our budget building purposes, so if
Okay.
you like the post-conviction unit, then that would be something that I would need to put a fiscal note on to build into our budget. The language that's pointed out, that likely will be, discussed several times as we get closer to the legislative session.
On the post-conviction unit, can you build that out so it starts so gradual, so that unit can that unit actually contract out until they have their fully staffed?
So what our thought is that we want to modify the definition of indigent defense services to include post-conviction cases, because there's a lot of confusion, and it's really hard to get attorneys to take these post-conviction cases, especially in our rural communities. And courts have actually reached out to us to ask us to assign it, because it's not in our definition, we don't, but we do provide them the list of attorneys willing to take them. So I think these changes would allow us to have a slow creation of the department where we start to build it. But if the board has that, or the department has the ability to enter contracts, we can do contracts, or possibly we can do hourly appointed.
So I think in the budget would be based on that contract money we already have, so it's just a phasing out into the department versus the contract money.
Yes, so what Susan is discussing is what we just saw in the newspapers is post-conviction attorneys are paid out of the public defender's budget. There's funding that's appropriated to them. And there was a delay in some payment. So one goal of doing something like this is that we could have salaried, so there would be not that delay. But we do have some funding built into our budget for this purpose, that some of it could be just reallocated to create these positions. It wouldn't be like new money in it.
Okay, so at this point, if anybody else have questions or concerns. Oh, hi.
Are you suggesting that these
It's not me, it's Hank. It was me last time.
Are you suggesting that these lawyers will be appointed in post-conviction matters on an individual basis? And so that you can end up having 6 or 7 people doing this work around the county?
That's what's my understanding, Marcy, that's what's happening now. And we're trying to consolidate it and work it into an actual non-contract and staff position.
It's almost based on years of processing these cases. I mean, even the Supreme Court needs to do it. And not even, they just don't like it. It's something that they create a department for, and they have subspecialists in the central legal staff that handle those. They're on the criminal side.
Well, that's good information, yeah.
So it would be better if you've got 2 or 3 people that are familiar with doing this and all the deadlines and all the traps and snares that the court has provided for the pleasure of the lawyers. It would be better if you just had 2 or 3 people that did this all the time, or that at least were sophisticated in it, and just have them do it rather than, take some, a defense lawyer like an Ely who's doing nothing but handling his defense, prosecution cases. And then, first of all, it would be cheaper. It would also go faster, and you would get less blowback from the local governments because you've got an institutional feature in place that would not cause all this disruption. Particularly, it would cause a lot of disruption with an individual deputy who's doing nothing but actually handling direct prosecutions.
I think thank you for all that information. And I didn't know the court looked at it that way. I think we all recognize, certainly those of us who've been involved with post-conviction, there are landmines everywhere. It's really specialized. And I fully support, I'm understanding that we all fully support this idea. And I guess I'm still kind of, people feel ready that, because I think we do have to take action on this.
And if I could share, there's one other area, we did add a part of the statute saying that the Department of Indigent Defense Services will not provide direct representation to clients. We
What
just,
page is that?
it's on page 2 of version 2. And
version 2 doesn't.
Okay, so at the very top, page 2,
right.
it's an NRS 180.xxx.
Yeah.
We just wanted to make it clear in statute, there's been an issue when we have shortage of attorneys and a question of whether the department should go to Elko or to White Pine and provide representation. We just don't have the bandwidth to be able to do that and our other duties. So we wanted to clearly state in statute that we can't provide direct representation for our specific Department of Indigent Defense in our duties.
I get that, but the way it's drafted on page 2 of version 2, it looks to me like it's being, is that being added or?
Sorry, it should have been printed in color,
Yeah, okay.
but that's being added.
Perfect. I think we all agree wholeheartedly that it should be added.
Okay, and then another thing that Brenda pointed out that'll affect the board is we added language. If you go with version 2 where we're contracting, we likely need to.
Page, please.
It's 2 to 3, so the start of the statute is 180.300, and the change is on page 3.
Okay.
Where it says that to be on our board, you cannot be an attorney that has a contract with the county or the department.
So that's subsection, wait for it, 5C.
Yes.
Okay.
On page 3.
Right.
Yes.
That makes sense. Thank you for pointing that out, because I had missed both of those. I guess we don't have enough money for color printer. All right, now, I'd like to hear somebody make a motion to approve version 2 with what you now highlighted, Marcy, to us, with the caveat that this office, this post-conviction office will be in Las Vegas, and adding experts and interns. Locklers, I think of them as interns. Okay. I mean, there, yeah, that's apparently there. Okay, anybody want to make that motion?
This is Chris. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Allison.
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification. That motion was a motion to approve, correct?
Yes, Joni.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
And it's been moved and seconded, is anyone opposed, or make an amendment? Are we ready for a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, I don't hear anybody opposed. We have a little tiny bit of microphone problem. I do hear somebody talking.
They just turn it off.
We hear somebody, and it sounds like, we can't hear what you're saying.
Okay.
You never had these troubles. We didn't have these troubles with our. Okay, well, we can't hear, if somebody does have something to say, none of us can hear anything but just maybe some garbled words. So we're gonna proceed to say it's approved, the motion is passed,
And then Marcy, do you want to move on?
Yes, moving on to equal justice and pay parity idea, and again, I don't know if this will be a necessity with the fact that there's a study being done on compensation, but what we were inspired here is directly calling out in statute that this equals this for payment, because what we've historically seen at the public defender's office, it seems that the public defender's office isn't building new positions as other agencies are, and I don't know if it's even appropriate to compare us to the Attorney General's office, but that's about the only agency that we appear directly opposite of. So this was inspired by an Equal Defense Act where they clearly called out that the prosecution side equals what's on the alternate side. We already have this in regulation in NAC 180, section 39, and section 40, subsection 10. And with the compensation study, I don't know if it's necessary to move forward with this, but I wanted to bring it to your attention to see if there were any thoughts. And then I do have attached to it what the salaries are at the state public defender's office with the 11% raise that they'll receive in July 1, as compared to many of our rural areas and our urban areas. And you can see how far behind we are in salaries. Even for White Pine, we make 2% less than White Pine after we get the 11% raise. That means right now we're making 13% less than the White Pine deputy district attorney. The state public defender's office. A deputy public defender makes 13% less than a deputy district attorney in White Pine. And it just gets worse from there. For example, a deputy public defender will make 54% less than a deputy district attorney in Douglas County. So we see that there's a huge distinction and difference in salaries, and this might be part of the issue as to why we can't fill these positions.
And is this something I'd like to hear from the monitor on this, if you feel you want to talk about it, because this seems like a big problem. No?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a moving target, so I really appreciate getting some of the numbers down there. So one issue is, this is not with the state public defender, but if it's a contracted attorney, there was previously Civil Solutions figured out what the average annual cost of overhead would be, and I think it was around 60,000 or something like that for a brick and mortar office. Not every attorney has that, but you have to go with a number. So if you had an office, you had a support staff person part-time, right, that would be the average. So this is required by the judgment. The judgment requires parity with the prosecutorial counterpart. And I think the state public defender is generally lower, even if you take 60 off the top of a contract amount, right, than most of the contracts that we see, right, especially as the contract amount is more flexible, so.
So what I did in the attachment is, we talk about the rural location, and then I contacted each of the rural locations and asked them, what is your top end for your deputy district attorney? And I put that top end there. Then I added what our deputy public defender at the Nevada State Public Defender will be making July 1st when that 11% raise comes into place. I showed you what the dollar difference was, and on average, we're 22% behind what all of our rural counties make, on average. I did compare it to the Attorney General salary. If we increase, like we talked about, they have that senior where they can move more experienced attorneys in. If we're able to increase our top end to what the senior would make, that would lower our percentage difference with those rural district attorneys where we'd only be 9% behind them, but we're still behind them. The issue continues when we look at the chief deputy district attorney salaries, the top end, as opposed to our supervising public defender. When we take those salaries into place, and again, we have to add that 11%, which they won't have until next month, we are 28% behind in pay. When we compare it to what different levels of the Attorney General make, that closes the gap and puts us only 7% behind, but we're 7% behind what the rurals make. If we look at what the urbans are making, even if we make these changes so that we match the AG's salary, we're 39% behind what the urbans are making for our deputies And we're 45% behind what the urbans are paying for their chief deputies.
Prosecutors?
Yes, because the Davis judgment
Right.
specifically calls out to match what prosecutors are paying.
That's my concern, so when I'm looking at the numbers, we're looking at the top end, the top DA, that you're looking, like you're quoting for Clark County, it's like 162, is someone that's been there and's gone up in pay, they thought that's like 20-year attorneys that are making that amount, they're topped out at the top of the scale. Comparing it to an entry-level attorney. So our entry-level DAs make half this.
Well, I think we are going again at the top end, but we have to remember that in our rural areas, there's attorneys that have 20 years of experience or a significant amount of experience, and they're making nowhere near what they'd be making in an urban area.
Do they have ranges? Because I think that's what's the entry range and what's the top end for the range, when you compare salaries. So like even at the AG's office, there's an entry range and then there's a top end, so we can't compare the top end to the bottom, the entry. Is what it looks like to me.
So we have no low end range at the state, we have the top end, so you can make an offer of what you feel is appropriate in there. So that's why we're comparing the top end of what they were making at the different levels. And I think for the DAs, I think there's 4 levels, like deputy DA 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I think at the lower level, I compared 1 and 2 to what a deputy would make, and then at the chief level, I compared 3 and 4. But there's also like an assistant district attorney that makes even significantly higher, which I didn't put into this calculation. So I do think that there is a difference because we don't have that level, but it just shows the difference in salaries and why individuals could be pulled when they have experience.
Before you talked about, you weren't talking about Clark.
I think Washoe has a 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay. Because Clark only has deputy, chief deputy, and then it does have 2 people who head of the civil unit, head of the administration unit, that report straight to Wilson, but
they're managing like 200
Right.
employees.
Yeah,
More
it's-
than that, right?
more than that.
Yeah.
And that's why we separated urban and rural. So there are 2 different charts, but I just wanted to give an idea because we are seeing a lot of individuals from our rural areas moving to the urban because of the difference in salaries.
So Laura,
Yeah.
that's in part why earlier I asked if there was like a schedule that goes up, because the union contracts for both the PD's office and the DA's office are on parity on Clark. And they have stages all the way through based on, years of service and when they shift to the chief deputy, that sort of thing. Are you saying that does not exist in the state AG's office, does not exist?
Correct. Very different.
Maybe that's what we need then, is a scale so that you know what an entry salary is, and after a year or 2 years, you know where their steps are gonna go to.
And Washoe just completed a comprehensive salary study across the whole organization, 3,000 people, of which the attorneys were part of that, so that might be useful information to you as far as comparisons statewide and then similar jurisdictions. So it's not just, us, it goes broader than that, which helped us get to where we are.
And have you or can you provide that? Yeah,
This is Chris.
I thought this was just gonna be a friendly little meeting.
Well, it is friendly, we
It's
support
friendly.
her asking for more money.
Absolutely, yeah.
We want her to ask for more money.
Yeah, well, we totally, and my head's kind of spinning here.
Well, I think the problem is that they don't have the step-up levels, we could go from attorney 1 to attorney 2.
Right, I agree.
built in.
Which I didn't know.
Right, you serve 5 years and you just pay them.
Right.
Well, and for ours, you go up some percentage every year, in each range.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Is that what the AG's office does too, Marcy?
The AG's office, like we said, they have different levels, and Peter, are you still on the call? Because he worked.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Right. So can you talk about the AG's salary?
Sure. So the way they're structured is they technically have internally it's a 7-step series in the Deputy Attorney General classification. Then above that, they have senior Deputy Attorney Generals. generally they just have more than that 7 years of experience to be put in that position. And then above that, they have chiefs, which oversee divisions in the AG's office. Above them, there are the assistants, who either are in charge of the entirety of like the civil side or the entirety of the criminal side of the Attorney General's office. Though those seven steps, I guess I'll caveat that is if there's somebody like very specialized and they want to fill that spot with somebody to higher step, they can and often do. It is listed in the same way as any other state position where the salary cap's listed on the schedule and they can pay anywhere up to that salary cap.
So parity is in Davis, parity is in our regs. You want the parity in statute.
Well, and I don't know if it's necessary because they are doing a compensation study and I don't know how it will come out. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time or if we just keep you updated as we hear more information. This did begin because he had brought up concerns about pay parity, especially in White Pine County. And we were trying to determine creative ways to create pay parity, like a stipend or something else. So this is us trying to determine how can we comply with the pay parity, or do we just need to wait for a legislative session for the legislature to fix the salary issues?
This is Chris. Might weigh in, Madam Chair.
Of course, by all means.
Thank you. Unfortunately, this has been a 35-year problem with state salaries overall, and how they've done it, not funded competitively. Then, as you know, in Washoe and Clark, we compete amongst the municipalities in the county. So every time this one group negotiates X, then well, look what they got over there. Yes. So we're out of whack to some extent, but maybe we're right for what, I don't know, not being an attorney. I would suggest that you not just wait on a compensation study. I think you should take a look, or this board should take a look at how do you begin to rectify for the future? What should you be your entry level? What should be your next? And what should be those titles? And then what salary ought to go with them, so that no matter what you're trying to change the format of what you've been stuck under as a state employee in the long run. So maybe it's a two-pronged approach.
Everybody's nodding their heads, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, just if you let the legislature set the tone of the discussion, that's where you're gonna end up.
Right.
So I think it's very important. Like, for example, Humboldt County last year and a half has been doing a compensation classification study. It came back in January and it included public defender and alternate public defender. So that would be a good place for information for rurals in those class 3 counties, which would be Upland, Churchill, Carson City, some others. So that would be very helpful to know those. I can get my hands on that pretty easy. But I think if you don't do this, you're going to be behind the 8 ball, and you're going to have to wait 2 more years to get into it.
Also, if you lose and I know this is gonna be a shock that Chris and I are gonna agree on something. That's a joke, Chris.
I hear you.
But you're gonna lose the ability to affect the outcome if you don't take some action at this point. Somebody's gonna make the decision for you, and then still have the problem we've had for 35 years or more, where salary parity around the state is very difficult to achieve because a lot of people live there for lifestyle reasons or other economic reasons or family reasons. And so sometimes the parity has to deal with the economic subculture of these various communities around the state because they don't equate to each other.
Madam Chair, can I just add a little bit from Davis, if that's okay? All right, just so in Davis, when Davis was listed the rural counties that did not have public defender offices and were relying on contractors. So the parity issue that it's not really elaborated on, because they were mostly concerned with saying the pay for the contract attorney has to be in parity with the DA. And that means you have to take into account overhead and what it's like to be a practitioner. It's not the same as having a salary, so that number's gonna be a lot higher than the DA's in order for it to be. So that was achieved, but what I think the settlement didn't really contemplate is the state attorney, the state public defender taking a larger role and providing first line public defense. And now if it's post-conviction as well, and then we have that issue that Chris is talking about where state salaries are not matching county salaries.
I think that the bill draft should go forward, it just has to get the language changed maybe a little bit, and we work out here to be, or we can find it else, I think there's gonna be something else coming out to maybe make the state pays more change or on point with everything else's page. But if we have one out there too, I was, everyone's asking for it.
And one of the things I should have brought up that was concerning is, in the last legislative session, they created a new position for Attorney General Legal Secretary, because they were more like a legal secretary in an office, so they got a 3-grade increase, where our legal secretaries that do the same work on the opposite side do not qualify for that increase, and so we didn't fall in. So this is where we start to see that issue of our legal secretaries probably are gonna go over to the Attorney General's office because they can get a significantly higher salary, even though they're pretty much doing the same type of work. So that's why we felt it was kind of necessary, why we brought this up is a legal secretary in this office should make what a legal secretary makes here. We have an issue with investigators because our investigators don't need to be post certified, where attorney generals do need to have that post certification, so it may not be appropriate to have their pay be on the same scale, but maybe it is. I just thought I'd bring those things up of why this was inspired to be brought forth and things that we're even seeing from the last legislative session.
And what it should be is, it does not make you, secretaries, no matter where you work in the state, that's your pay. So maybe it's just bringing everything up to the AG's level of, which is a general classification for the state. It's not a distinction of office. That makes sense.
You think that's work, Marcy?
Ultimately, I think we could make this presentation, but we do know they're doing a lot of compensation things, so I don't know what's gonna come out of that. I think it's important to have this discussion of creating all these different positions when they're basically doing the same thing. It's really creating a hardship for us.
So we only have one version of our equal defense bill draft, correct?
Yes, and it affects NRS 180. I don't know if we need to add anything for 260. That might be what we're seeing in our counties is they're actually matching salaries in most of the counties. The DAs and the PDs generally have about the same, but where we're not seeing that is at the state level.
Okay, so taking in what everybody said, I think there's a consensus we need to get in there. I can't let this get ahead of us. And this is a good, there's uncertainty because of what the state may or may not be doing. So we just move this forward. All right, is there a motion to, I guess, approve? I don't know what we're calling it. It's in the packet. This is equal justice and pay parity bill draft request as proposed by staff. Is that kind of what we're saying?
Is that covered?
I'll say it. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right.
Okay, moving on to the third one. So the inspiration for this is to create pipelines for individuals to obtain indigent defense services. We discussed in our first version that we want to create a rural law unit, so that's not really addressed by this third proposal. What's addressed here is something that mirrors what we're doing for doctors to move into rural communities. So Assembly Bill 45 was passed last session, and it provides student loan repayment for healthcare providers that make a 2-year commitment into a rural office or a rural county, and they get paid, it's $75,000 for a 2-year commitment. So the first year they receive $37,500, the second they receive the same, and they can re-up it for another 2 years. So in a total of 4 years, you can receive $150,000 to be repaid. It wouldn't directly go to the student loan borrower, or go directly to the student loan borrower. I can't even say that. Person that takes out the loans. Debtor. It wouldn't go directly to the student loan company like we see with our JRJ Justice. It would go to the person. So this is what we have the proposal of. I wanted to share with you that we did a survey. We received 21 responses. We sent this out to our indigent defense list, and you can see that about 71% of them have outstanding loans. When we look at the amounts are between 180 and over $240,000 for a majority of them. We asked them if they would make this 2-year time commitment. Is that the appropriate length of time? 71% said yes. And I think that there's a lot of support saying, even if I don't have student loans, I think that some sort of repayment is part of the solution. And one of the ideas that I felt I wanted to point out here is how they talk about someone has lost student debt of over $250,000. He's working at a public defender's office, and he's driving flipping Uber at night and on the weekends to be able to pay his bills. So this is just what we're seeing for our public defenders trying to make the ends meet with their student loans. And we're hoping that if we make this proposal, that it could create that drive of getting people to go into the rural area. And at least those that responded to the survey said this would make a difference.
Justice Moffin?
They understand that the loan repayment is also subject to federal income.
Yes, so we've talked about that. I think there needs to be action at the federal level to make an exception to the tax like they did for doctors, but it's better than nothing.
Well, no, I'm just saying that's a reality.
Well,
And it come off the top end of the tax rate.
they also, though, get, if they work 10 years in the public sector, the balance of the debt is forgiven. So
And there's
this
no
would help them.
recapture of the tax liability at the end.
No, they still would be paying taxes on that money along the way, because even during the 10 years, they still have to make the monthly payment. So this would cover the monthly payment. And at the end of the 10 years, even if they've only paid off 100,000 of that 240, the balance is forgiven as long as you work 10 years for a nonprofit or government agency.
And there's no tax consequence.
There's no consequence for the forgiveness of debt.
Correct. And this is Chris. I had a scholarship that actually qualified if I taught in a disadvantaged area, and they reduced part of my loan as well. So that's what Marcy and I were kicking around as an idea for an incentive.
And the other thing I would point out is that there's no requirement that this has to be your federal loans. A lot of students have private loans, so you could use this for your private loans. Your federal loans are forgiven after 10 years. But what we're seeing is a 10-year commitment is a really long time, but a 2-year commitment is doable, right? Anyone can move anywhere for 2 years, but asking someone to move there for 10 might be a little too much.
Okay, so I'm just saying, 2 years is enough. It just, you get to, it just, I think it saves money in the long term. It's a great idea for an inducement and to fill a need, but that's a lot of money for 2 years.
Well, how many give them money, also money for going there to study for the bar and for their commitment? So we're gonna 15,000 and 6,500, and then we're giving them an additional, they stay 2 years.
So if this bill draft passes, it would, LASSO probably would be expired by that point in time. We only have 10 awards to be able to pay the $15,500, and we have 15 awards for the $6,500. So it's a finite amount of money that we have to be able to award. And that was specifically with us partnering with Dieter to be able to obtain that funding. Whether we are able to renew that funding moving forward would be up to Dieter, because I think part of the push and why they wanted to get involved is we have this short timeline to get a large amount of attorneys into this area. So ultimately, that would be up to them as to whether they consider that.
So they pick up master.
If we're able to get that funding in, yes, they could get both.
Okay, does anybody have anything more to discuss on this?
And I would just add, this is what they're paying for medical providers to go to the rurals. It's basically exactly the same amount for doctors and other health practitioners to go into rural communities.
Okay. Anybody, we're done with it sounds like anybody on the phone have any input, Chris? Anyone
I
else?
think it's just one more tool to attract and hopefully retain some of these individuals. I'm thinking, did we start this program with Bill Raggio back in the day? I have a flash that went through my brain when we were having a shortage of doctors and we were looking at graduates, what's that called, the GLE or whatever from, and how we looked at where we assigned people. And so that at that time, I think Senator Raggio, we worked on coming up with this kind of a concept, but I don't know, I could be confusing myself.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to accept.
Chris? Okay, is there a second? Allison? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so it's carried that the student loan repayment bill draft request be presented to the governor's office.
When you straight down, Marcy.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, you're doing
Thanks,
great,
Cindy, come back.
Marcy, you're doing such an incredible job, you and your staff.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, number 9.
And I've asked if Peter's on, if he wants to take this. Peter, are you still there?
Yep, I'm still here, just having trouble finding my mute button. Sure, yeah, I can give a brief update on the training. I think we already discussed a lot of the LASSO stuff. The annual conference went really well. We were able to offer, I think we ended up with 10.5 units total of CLE. Our last speaker, Karina Dunn, was in the hospital, so she couldn't make it. We had a really good turnout. We got really good reviews from the surveys, so it was a well-attended event. I guess in addition, I'll just mention, like, as you can see later in the annual report, we sent a half a dozen attorneys to the Mountain Skills Trial Academy from the rural counties. It got excellent reviews. It was put on by NCDC and NACDL trainers. These are blue ribbon trial academy instructors brought in from around the country to teach in Salt Lake City. And we were able to send half a dozen practitioners from the rural counties. They had an excellent time. We sent another 7 attorneys to an NACDL conference in Las Vegas. We were able to send 1 attorney to an advanced writing training from the state bar. All of these have been paid for using that additional funding we received from that 518 Section 7 funds. A lot of this money has also been set aside for people to attend the NCDC because only so many people can go per session of the NCDC, and because it was it's split into 2 sessions, one in June and one in July. We couldn't, until maybe recently, pay for the July session. We weren't sure if we were gonna have authority going into next year. So people who had July sessions backed out of their going because they weren't sure if they're gonna be reimbursed or paid for by DIDS or not. But we still anticipate 2, or I guess 2 are going currently in June from the Carson City office to the Trial Practice Institute. And we'll be picking up the cost of that. So really great training outcomes this year. In large part because of that additional funding we got. Also, I'd like to thank the Nevada Public Health Foundation. We partnered with them to help put on the conference. They've been absolutely phenomenal. They've helped coordinate our experts, coordinate the travel, coordinate registration, had people on site at the conference to make sure everything was running smoothly. It was such a huge relief to us from having to spend the amount of time we typically do planning and organizing these conferences. and they're really fantastic to work with. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Peter? That's wonderful, all of that news. Thank you. Nobody here seems to have any questions. Okay, and is that, we still need the Lasso pipeline discussion?
I think we've talked about that enough. If you have any questions, we can answer.
Okay, so next up is item 10, annual report.
Yes, so by July 1st of every year, we have to send an annual report to the executive, judicial, and legislative branches. And we've attached a copy of our annual report for this year. We did try to take some data in the back and show with the cases that they've reported opening this year, how many attorneys we should have seen a workload equivalent of versus what the reported time is. So that's the data that you can look at when we're trying to get people in compliance with the workload. But we really took an opportunity to highlight what our board and department has been able to do with the legislative changes, especially Assembly Bill 518 fills up most of their annual report, showing all the great work we've been able to achieve. We also talk about our partnership with NPHF and our partnership with the Board of Governors. And I just think it's been a very positive year for us, and we have our 10 goals for the future. So hopefully this will help us get there.
Marcy, thank you for you and your staff for everything. You know, reading this report is almost overwhelming, big accomplishment. I know it's been the level of commitment that you and your staff have consistently shown is just incredible. Everyone's nodding their heads. Even the people I can't see. Right. But it's just something that it says possible at the review and approval.
Yes, we need you to approve it so that we can send it to.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, well, it's absolutely approved with gratitude, so thank you. All right, now, thank you. We do have our upcoming meetings. That's obviously, I don't think we need action on that because we're all those that we know about, and we do have the ability if something comes up. Right, Marcy's nodding her head. We need more meetings because when you think about everything we discussed today and all the activity that's been undertaken by our staff, and they need to be everything they need to add to this. These dates are on our calendars and we look forward. Okay, is there any public comment? We're about to conclude our meeting. Does anyone, any member of the public, have anything they want to contribute at this time? Right, I'm not hearing anyone, and so do we have a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second? Thank you. All in favor? It's a great meeting. Thank you, guys.
Nice job.
Yeah. What can I do to help? Oh, you guys.